Thank you so much for joining us. This is a terrific panel we've got, really just going to take you through all the nuts and bolts from chapter and verse on the tax whistleblower program, the IRS whistleblower program. Joining me is the fabulous Steve Kohn, who I've co-counseled with on a number of cases, including the Brad Birkenfeld case, where a fellow got $104 million, one of the biggest cases out there in all of whistleblowers, and he's just got a wealth of knowledge on this program. And then joining are two of my colleagues, one who just joined us, Eric Hylton, just years and years of background in IRS and criminal investigations regarding money laundering and offshore accounts, just knows it from tooth to tail, and he's just come over here. So we've just really benefit from his great knowledge. And then, of course, my longtime partner, Steve Miller, who's the acting commissioner at the IRS, also had a number of other senior positions there, has worked with me on a number of these whistleblower cases and brings just such a good, healthy knowledge of what the IRS is looking for, what the IRS will respond to, and what makes sense in terms of whistleblower filing. So just so thrilled to have this group, really an A-list of folks to help you as you're thinking about the tax whistleblower program. But Steve, let me start with you. Well, take us through, as you've seen it from your perspective, related to other programs, how the tax whistleblower program's working and your take on it all.
So thank you, Dean, and thank you for that introduction. The tax whistleblower program has been extremely effective where it has been employed appropriately. It has brought in billions of dollars, and whistleblowers have received hundreds of millions in awards. So it can work, and it can work very well. But like all of these reward programs, they can be tricky, they can be technical, and it's important to work through it properly. We have a number of technical experts today. I don't want to go into all the details. We can come back to it, but I want to express 2 points. The first is the IRS whistleblower law is not in a vacuum. You can use the tax law in conjunction with the other related whistleblower laws. For example, in a Foreign Corrupt Practices Act case, there's often tax liabilities, but you can get them for bribery. You can get them for securities violations under the SEC program, and then you can get the tax violation under the IRS program. The same goes, we had a case for biofuels. IRS came in on tax credits, the EPA on environmental violations, the SEC on securities violations, and justice on false claims. So think of the tax whistleblower law not just for tax and tax underpayments and money laundering and other things that are directly covered in the IRS program. Think of it in a more broad way. Second, I really want to get into the success of this program. It's really been underrated. It has brought in billions. It has made systemic change. So in the case that Dean and I did, the Bradley Birkenfeld case, just as an example, the IRS admits that it completely altered offshore Swiss banking. And Dennis Ventry, a professor of law at the University of San Diego and the chair of the IRS advisory panel, looked at that one case. And he concluded that it brought in billions and had tremendous impact. Thousands of cases, thousands of people coming into the voluntary program, hundreds of criminal prosecutions. We have calculated since it was filed the total assets to the United States to be at $16 billion recovered. So these laws can work remarkably well. And the whistleblower is entitled to a minimum 15% and a maximum 30% of the monies they directly bring in. So that's an overview, I think, of how powerful this law is and how it can be tied into other whistleblower laws.
Well said, Steve. And I will just give you a quick primer because I really want to turn it to those on the receiving end. For those who are listening and thinking, well, maybe this is for me, What I would tell you is that the IRS is interested in when you've got specific information, detailed information, ideally documents. In other words, they don't want to hear about, well, I was at a bar once and the fellow told me about his cousin who had a friend who had a bank account. They want the fellow that says, well, I work at the bank and here's the DVD or the H drive of all the names, accounts, serial numbers. You get the idea. That's what they want to get. And somebody who's very knowledgeable insider, that's the kind of the real ticket for them in terms of what they're looking for. And it's presenting all that in a format that they can understand, that they can work with, and you can understand. You don't want to give them War and Peace, but on the other hand, you want them to make it understand. So it's kind of an art form to get that there, and we've had good luck with it. But that's ideally what they're going to want, is folks who really have got the goods and the detailed knowledge. But Eric, you are on the receiving end of this. You have such a great familiarity with it. You can speak better than I can. What do you think is it that, yes, here's what we need to see in a good filing with the IRS? Because I should add, as a preface, I apologize, Eric, so many people file. It's kind of many file, but few are called. In other words, you get thousands of people filing, but you just don't get that many that the IRS says, okay, we're gonna get. That's the key. You're trying to get the IRS to take action on your claim. But Eric, I'm sorry, your thoughts.
No. It is truly an honor to kind of be on this panel with, here again, I say legends here. You know, I said, Steve, I was looking at you, reading your book earlier, your handbook there. You know, Steve Miller, all the great things you did for the IRS Whistleblower Program, and Dean Zerbe, you know, all you guys, and it's just truly an honor. But, you know, in my 30 years of experience with IRS and 26 years of working in criminal investigation, I mean, having whistleblowers and informants is such a valuable tool for an investigation. And I give a little 2-second commercial for IRS criminal investigation, because I consider them the best financial investigators in the world, and is well known for that, to follow the money, looking at money laundering, looking at a lot of the activity, look at, I mean, almost 1,000 cases a year from money laundering perspective. But more particularly, what are we looking for? What is the IRS looking for? And, you know, you touched on some of that, Dean, you know, in some of your opening comments, but obviously we want documented information. And for years, one of the key factors that we pursued are professional enablers. Who are those individuals? Those are the gatekeepers that are out there, and in regards to setting up all of these different shell companies and shelf companies throughout the world. And in regards to, okay, how is the money being flowed? And do you have documented information associated with that? And you can use tax and money laundering as their interplay. I'll share one quick story on a big major money laundering tax operation in which we disguised ourselves in some regards as being individuals who wanted to pursue some money laundering operations and doing some mortgage fraud. But we knew that this was a big tax shelter operation. So we walked in, and it was said that we wanted to launder these funds, you know, based on that, but actually was able to do a search warrant and now find, you know, hundreds and thousands of individuals. And this informant is the one whistleblower who actually came and provided this information, thousands of information on individuals around the world as well as in the US, who were conducting money laundering activities as well as doing tax evasion. So, I mean, when I think about it, I think about clear evidence and documented evidence and being aware of that illegal activities. Another example is sanctions violations, or IEPA, International Emergency Economic Powers Act, you know, which was done in 1977, was enacted in 77, or just more your sanction violation. You're seeing it being used more so now from an economic standpoint, but it is I've seen so many cases in which we've gotten information on businesses that are conducting transactions with sanctioned countries. And so you had some insiders who had certain information associated. So they had document, not, you know, looking at emails, looking at other information associated with the bribery. She just wanted to be a part of the discussion there, Dean. Ways in which how they hide. Hide or conceal the schemes. Also looking at, how do you bolster? Do you have other individuals that can how to bolster the allegation associated with it? Beneficial ownership is another area in which you have information associated with, how they're trying to be, set up these opaque transactions. So those are just some of the, good examples as to some of the things that we're looking for, clear documented evidence. I've also had individuals who come in with tape information. I know that's a little tricky, in how we pursue that, but, it's nothing like hearing that person's voice and they're describing this. So, those are just some great examples there.
Just fascinating what you're going through, Eric. Great to understand all that. Steve, you're seeing firsthand that the Congress is beating the drums, the new administration is beating the drums about tax gap and expanding the IRS and examination. It seems to me this is the time that the IRS would be looking stronger at whistleblowers and whistleblower information. Take us through how you see the big picture, but also maybe your sense too of what you think are the ingredients for a good whistleblower filing.
So, and thanks for having me, guys. It's wonderful. But, and I just want to echo what Steve and Dean said and what Erica said. I was at the IRS in the the early 2000s, and that's years before that because I'm a legend. But in point of fact, the information that the IRS was getting at the time, we were very focused. Eric and I both were very focused on offshore accounts. And the information from the whistleblowing public was groundbreaking and wonderful, and gave us the opportunity that we needed to do, which is basically break some bank secrecy and create enough concern in the population of offshore holders that they came in. Because when we redid, and I was a part of that, when we sat around the table and redid the voluntary compliance program, prior to the first one, there were 20 a year. First one got done, and it was 10,000. And it just kept going from there. And it was a wonderful program that was opened up by reason of whistleblowers and that work that was done there. Let's talk about what Dean actually asked me, which is it as relevant today as it was in 2010? Heck yes, more so. A couple of things to think about. The entire Biden approach is based on what's not getting paid, the tax gap. What's missing? Is this as important a time for the whistleblowing program as it was in 2010 when the whistleblowing program helped break bank secrecy? And the answer is absolutely, absolutely. Right now, there's a unique period going on where the Biden administration has put forward a funding mechanism for the Internal Revenue Service and has asked for various things that will only be helped to the extent whistleblowers come forward. There will be more information provided to the service. There will be more people at the IRS, more reporting. These are the types of things. And there's a focus on enforcing against those who are not paying their fair share, whether that's corporations or whether it's wealthy Americans or others. Scufflaws, as it were. And that's where the whistleblowing public has been helpful in the past and can be helpful now. There's no question about that. There's as part of this whole discussion, there was a study just recently put out. IRS economists took a look at 2006 to 2013 data. They found that the top 1% was leaving out perhaps as much as 20% of their income as they filed. And that's a ripe target for the IRS, and it's a ripe target for the whistleblowers to come and look at and help the IRS with. Why are they not? Part of that was offshore accounts. Part of it's the very complex structures that are sort of opaque to the IRS, but that an insider or someone else who takes a look and is involved in the transaction will be able to understand and communicate to the service. So I think this is a perfect time.
Right. And I think culturally the IRS is getting into a better place of more welcoming and accepting of whistleblowers. Eric, I think your shop at CI Criminal Investigations always been good working with whistleblowers historically. And I think the LB&I folks and others, the large business, are getting better and better. I think it's good days. And then we won't talk about it too much today, but we've got some legislation that the National Whistleblower Center has been championing that's going to help make a good program greater confidence for whistleblowers. So that's very good news too. Steve Kohn, I wanted to come back to you a little bit. You represent one of the, I guess, the Danske Bank, really one of the biggest whistleblowers out there in terms of money laundering. Eric touched on money laundering as well too. Talk to us a little bit about that. You mentioned all these kind of multitude of issues, and maybe if you can unmute and take us through how you see that and your views on that in terms of whistleblowers.
Sure. So the Danske Bank whistleblower, Howard Wilkinson, exposed a $240 billion money laundering scheme from Russia through the Danske branch of Estonia into Western banks, Bank of America, JP Morgan, and Deutsche Bank. The money launderers and the corrupt people didn't want to keep their money in Russia or didn't want it in rubles. They wanted it in dollars. And then from dollars, they send it around the world. A case like this is what I was describing before. It's multifaceted. You can have money laundering, securities violations, foreign bribery, all in one, because where did this money come from and what is it being used for? And the money laundering is essentially the web that ties all that corrupt money together. And these are perfect cases for filing aggressively. Also, because many of your whistleblowers in a money laundering case are blowing the whistle on very bad people, often overseas, the IRS program has an administrative provision that says the IRS will grant confidentiality to whistleblowers to the fullest extent available under law. So what that means is, although the IRS program doesn't have the statutory anonymity provisions of, say, the Dodd-Frank Act and securities, by rule, it offers equal protection. And this is very important because a money laundering whistleblower is at high risk because of whose money it is, and often overseas. And we know it could be drugs, it could be bribery, it could be terrorism, it could be guns, it could be sanctions busting. These are not nice people. And therefore, anonymity and confidentiality is critical. But it's really, if you're going to look at anti-corruption worldwide, the IRS program, which covers money laundering, should be considered a central component to any effective anti-corruption program.
You make a good point too, Steve. I think you're right. And of course, these gentlemen on here know it too. I think the IRS is very good at confidentiality. But just to be clear, they won't, it's kind of where they do benefit from overall taxpayer confidentiality rules. They won't let the taxpayer know there's a whistleblower. In other words, they'll not even acknowledge or admit that there's a whistleblower. So they're pretty much a cone of silence in that regard and are very good in that regard. But Eric, I wanted to turn to you just a little bit. You live and breathe this money laundering kind of question, similar, your general thoughts, but also again, I know you've touched on in tax, but in particular to money laundering, are there things that you especially think make for a good filing or something that's going to attract the attention of the IRS in terms of whistleblower filing a money laundering claim?
Well, no, I think it's great. I love the way Steve, even characterized it. We're not talking about, if you're a whistleblower and you're involved in, and you know about money laundering activities, you're not talking about the best character folks, And I've been involved in quite a few, in Latin America and Europe and the Far East and, significant, money laundering investigations and places that I probably shouldn't have been, but I was able to look at that. But no, I think it's important to recognize that, as Steve has expressed, looking at this in connection to other crimes. Because what I emphasize consistently is more of a whole of government approach. A whole of government approach as we address many of these money laundering issues, EPA violations, FCPA. I think of the one MDMB case. And Goldman Sachs just recently pleading to a deferred prosecution associated with that. $1 billion bribery scheme, in which they were bribing Malaysian and UAE officials. I mean, those are types of cases in which you get some good documented information associated with that the service is very much interested in, as well as, other federal authorities. I mean, I think bribery is something that, I would consistently try to push because when you have bribery situations, you're going to have other nefarious characters associated with it. So it's just, I think money laundering is an area ripe for us to look at for whistleblowers because first and foremost, the money is pretty lucrative, but secondly, is an opportunity, and IRSCI is a great place to investigate it as well.
I had one last thought for you, Eric. I want to get your thoughts. We're always interested in this is being broadcast worldwide. I know you get this question a lot, but what area the IRS and money laundering and tax that the IRS is waking up thinking about or wants to hear about that they'll say, oh, they're calling us from here. I'm all ears. So tell us your thoughts on that.
Sure, that is a question I get quite often, and I think I can look at it from two different perspectives. So you have the Financial Action Task Force, and they'll come up with a number of countries that you will take a look at. And obviously there's a lot of heightened attention associated with Panama, with the Panama Papers leak that was associated with that. But you also have some countries that you might not even think about whistling as far as the Financial Action Task Force. You may have Ghana, you have Nigeria, some countries there. But just from more a tax and flow of money standpoint, there was a high emphasis on Singapore. I mean, Singapore is an area in which a number of, I think global wealth indicators will reflect that flows coming from Switzerland over to Singapore, as well as UAE. And UAE has these financial free zones in which a lot of individuals are aware of financial trade zones, but these financial free zones in which you can set up your companies there and have a certain amount of years of no taxation and being set up with the various shell companies and shelf companies to kind of move funds through. Then obviously the Caribbean is an area that is a lot of attention still there, and a number of countries there. So that's primarily where I see a lot of the focus, but but I would say at least when I was with the IRS, the IRS was looking everywhere. Because you do have some cases a couple cases in Israel, Bank Leumi, Bank Hylton. So there's a lot of attention throughout the world.
Very interesting. And just Steve Miller, just a question for you. I was in probably for Eric as well, but we talked about the types of individuals. I know the IRS has had a strong interest in cryptocurrency, and obviously Eric's so knowledgeable about that. But crypto, are there areas particularly that you think, well, yes, here's yes, rich individuals, corporations, but is there anything like that kind of strikes in your mind where you think, for both you gentlemen, that would start with you, Steve, that you think the IRS would be interested in hearing about?
So you hit them already. Cryptocurrency, obviously wealthy taxpayers shifting money, but especially focused on international transactions, which have traditionally been a place that are opaque to the Internal Revenue Service, whether it's offshore accounts or whether it's dealings between related parties overseas. Those are areas the service is going to have a great deal of interest in.
Interesting. I know Lee Martin, the director of the Whistleblower Office, in the discussion the other day that I had with him and some others, that he had said IRS is always interested in hearing about something that's new to them that they don't know about. That sounds self-evident, but I think that matters as well too to them. Well, I want to be mindful of everybody's time, but Eric, is there any last thoughts you've got for our folks as we're talking about whistleblowers? Because then I want to turn it over to Mr. Kohn for the last thoughts.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a point on the cryptocurrency. I mean, I think it's an area which is ripe for whistleblowing because I mean, if you look at the market capitalization for cryptocurrency, you're talking almost $2 trillion. And so then even for U.S. taxpayers, kind of using foreign exchanges, crypto exchanges, and kind of thinking about it as if you had a foreign account. So if you're aware of that, those opportunities, I think, is ripe for whistleblowers. So I just wanted to add that point.
Very interesting. Well, this has been terrific and extraordinarily helpful, and we'll have a lot of good information and data on the websites as well, too, with the National Whistleblower Center. So you can do that, and obviously contact us. We're always happy to talk to you about what opportunities might be there for you and give you the best counsel we can. But Steve, let me turn it over to you to get us our final words.
Thank you, Dean, and thank you, everybody. I just want to say that the IRS program can work. It has mandatory rewards. I also want to say that it's important to get good counsel. In the Birkenfeld case, we all know that it started out very rough. He didn't file the right forms. He didn't go to the right office. He got himself in a little trouble. Dean and I were able to put Humpty Dumpty back together.
Yeah, we weren't his lawyers for that part of it.
Yeah, exactly.
We were the lawyers for the check part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We had to put it together and get it filed in the right office. But in all of these whistleblower reward laws, including the IRS, you got to keep the following in mind. One, they will work, they will protect you, and they will pay if you do it right. On the other hand, keep in mind that you're still requesting money from the United States government. So you have to check the boxes, make sure everything's doing according to the rules. But one rule that skips is you can be a participant. Like in offshore banking cases, the banker often is the person who's been handling the ill-gotten gains, setting up the secret account, but they can blow the whistle. You don't have to be an angel. In tax cases, even if you've assisted in, say, someone to evade taxes, you can still qualify. And essentially the best sources are often participants, not the kingpin, not the person who's planned and initiated it, who's the real top criminal, but the people below them that are necessary to implement these illegal schemes. They can qualify, they can get an award, and they can really make things better for all honest taxpayers.
I think you said that so well, Stephen. I just wanted to add, even though I said you get the last word, just to be clear that you can be a non-U.S. citizen and get an award. So just for that to be clear, sometimes people think the award's only for U.S. citizens, but you're right. And they're expecting that you may not come in with clean hands. It's not the folks coming from the Angels and from choir practice and the Boy Scout meeting that are coming in to blow the whistle. They get it. As Eric and Steve both said, they need and want the knowledgeable insider with the documents and information, and that's who it's going to be, and they recognize that. So it's certainly their welcome ad is out there for folks with the good, solid information, and no question about it. Well, thank you all so very, very much. This has been a terrific panel as part of a terrific National Whistleblowers Day. I thank my panelists enormously for this and for all your time. And with that, we'll turn it back to the folks in Washington.